News Leader is brought to you by the new BMW X5.
I'm joined by Steve Wozniak, the legendary Apple developer and the self-proclaimed entrepreneur. Steve, welcome to South Africa. I know that you've got a lot to do with education and teaching people about technology. So what's the latest when it comes to that?
No, I'm not at the current time. I spent 8 years actually teaching because I wanted one-on-one teacher to student, individual student experiences that I could watch in their lives and track them as people and not just write a book and now I've educated 1 million people. I'm not that kind of person. Getting involved with big school districts. My wife, however, worked for corporate Apple Education Group, and she would travel the world to places like South Africa, working with some of the top school districts and the countries that were most moving the furthest on technology and schools and all that. So she has more experience in that regard than I.
Apple faces a challenge from Samsung, Google Glass, and so on. What would you do now, and what would your big idea be if you were in charge of Apple?
I look at the things that make my life easier in computing. And sometimes it's user interface, sometimes it's a new technology like the multi-touch screen that allows you to do things smaller and smaller. These feel easier and closer to me and I don't have to think, but I do my least thinking when I'm speaking to the phone. Apple has the Siri program and I just keep continually finding it. Yes, there are sometimes things it doesn't do as well, maybe navigate to a certain place it doesn't know as Google Voice does, but in the end, Siri is the best. You can ask questions about the world and get answers right away. You're sitting at a dinner table and somebody says, I wonder about that. I don't know. Well, let's ask Siri. It's so easy. So I think artificial intelligence, I like it when I speak like a human being, not thinking about I am a computer, I'm talking to a computer. I'm a human being like I'd ask another human being a question, and sometimes it speaks back to me with the right answer. I want that to develop further and further and further to where it understands me the way you do right now.
Technology and human rights, ethics, these are quite important factors that enter into anyone's discussion looking at the future of technology. Give us some of your ideas.
Well, it's only going to take a while to get to a certain stage. Actually, it's continually moving in that direction of understanding what we're saying better and better and better. No, it doesn't have an eye that looks around a room right now and says, aha, that is a light, that is a camera bag. It doesn't know what the things are, but it can identify objects. We're moving in the right direction, and eventually it'll know it the way our brain does.
We've spoken a little about sensors in computers. Do you think the sensors' ability to see, hear, smell, and so on is the future of technology?
Well, you know what? The eventual computers may develop consciousness that's not the same as human consciousness. But for a human, it's really relating our muscles and our understanding to all of our sensory input of all different types. And we're getting closer and closer because if you look at a smartphone, it has a microphone, which is like ears. It has a camera, which is like eyes. It has a sense of, it has accelerometers that can tell when it's moving, like our inner ear does. It has a sense of touch when you touch screens and move things. So it's got very many of the senses of a human being. We haven't figured out yet how the brain organizes those senses and touches into consciousness.
What are you working at the specific time? Anything special?
I'm following it, not looking at it like an engineer. I'm thinking about it, but my whole life, like an awful lot of engineers sit down and say, how does the brain work? We don't know how it's wired. Could I develop a little program that simulates a neuron or a little piece of hardware that simulates a neuron and hit a formula? And if I have 1 trillion of them in one place, will it all automatically learn and develop consciousness? A lot of people work in that direction, but we don't have that formula yet. Someone might stumble onto it. I'm not doing the full-time engineering right now, so it's not going to be me.
Did you or have you invested in Bitcoin?
Actually, as far as Bitcoin goes, I kept trying to buy one in early days. And I kept getting stymied because I have very little time and I've got to set up special bank accounts with certain banks. I finally got to one called Coinbase, and I've got to get approved at this level, I get approved at that level, I get approved at another level. I'm still hanging up. So I don't really have a Bitcoin yet. Somebody sent me, I forget what it was called. It says QT. It's one of these other virtual currencies. Never quite gotten my Bitcoin, although I tried. And I was trying through Mt. Gox. And my son had like 4 Bitcoins from early on, long before most of us ever knew about Bitcoins. He had them, but they were with Mt. Gox.
You, at one point, had almost an aviation career. What happened?
Actually, because of the fact that I got hit in a way that I had no memories of the crash, no memories of maybe 15 seconds before the crash, I didn't really have a crash in my head. So it was easy for me to buy another plane, get in it, and fly again for a while. But then I decided, you know what, if you're not really, don't have enough time to put hundreds of hours into moving your rating up to, you know, to twin engine, to instrument rating, to jet engine, if you don't have the time to do that, and helicopters and that, then I said, I'll put it off till I'm 50 and I'll have all the time. When I got to 50 years old, I didn't have any time at all.
By the way, while we've been talking, I've had a look at your watch, which is just simply amazing. Could you tell us a little about it?
The watch has some old vacuum tubes called nixie tubes. They glow bright digits. When I turn my wrist, hours and minutes are displayed very brightly. Turn my wrist, hours and minutes. You read them in order. And the reason these are old tubes that haven't been made in 45 years. They run on 140 volts. The watch is waterproof, so you can take it in the bathtub at least once. and the reason I like this watch is I can tell that my brain reads such big glowing digits so easy. I don't have to struggle to see the time. And every other watch, I could feel my brain struggling more.
Did you make it?
No, I wish I had made it. It would have been easy, but you have to think of it. There's an astronomer in Tucson, Arizona that makes these watches, and he sells them online. So look up Geek Watches, you'll probably find it.
Are you doing a lot of road shows, speeches, talks, and that kind of thing at the moment?
Yes, I am. It started by accident quite a number of years ago when my last kid finally graduated from high school and left home for college. And here I was in a big house all alone, and I hadn't used a passport in 10 years. A friend of mine kept calling me from all sorts of exotic places around the world, like Moscow and Prague, and I said I was kind of jealous, and he said, oh, I'm speaking. My speech agent could get you speeches. So his speech agent started getting me speeches, and it's really blossomed. And I love it. It's a really fun thing to do.
Steve, you're a well-known prankster. In fact, it's on your tweet account. If you were in the corporate world, what would you do to prank up day to day?
Small little jokes on your working mates. Also, just telling jokes is one thing, but playing little tricks on them where they say, oh my gosh, look at this strange thing that happens on my computer, but it was some software you put into it. Those are just fun things because engineering, when you're intense and you're working so hard on problems, it's like you're trying to struggle and solve a bunch of puzzles at once and get something to work, whether it's hardware or software. You need relaxing breaks, and the jokes and the pranks are the relaxing time. That's the thing that makes it worthwhile for me.
And any particular message to small and medium business or budding technologists in South Africa?
Of course, an awful lot of really great new moves in the world, like Apple Computer and Google and Facebook and Yahoo and a bunch of these companies all got started by young kids just out of college that didn't have much experience, didn't have much money, didn't have any real background and training and hardly in what they were doing, but they had a great idea that the big companies of the world didn't think much of at the time.
Well, that was Steve Wozniak joining us in Johannesburg, well-known and legendary Apple founder.
News Leader is brought to you by the new BMW X5. Respect isn't commanded, it's earned.